Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Board. As Dr. Grimsey noted, I have some friends with me today. We're here today to review the framework moving forward for the second phase of student assignment here in Moore County. And with me today to be part of this presentation is our consulting partners from Numerex, Laura Evans and Mike Miller. And they'll jump in at different points in the presentation. But as you recall, in December 2018, you endorsed the student assignment plan for Medeeds Creek Elementary, the new Medeeds Creek Elementary, that primarily was looking at reducing crowding at two of our elementary schools, Vass Lakeview and Sandhills Farm Life Elementary. And so that plan focused primarily on reducing crowding at those two schools. And we also noted as we worked through the process that took us through the summer and fall of 2018, that there was additional work that would need to be done as we looked at opening of 3 additional elementary schools with 800 student capacities throughout and looking at the entire district. There would be additional work that we would need to be looking at. We need to be prioritizing as we move forward in this second phase of the student assignment plan. And so today, we would like to review some key data points with you that frame our work, ground our process as staff begins working with Numerex and working with our community to develop a draft of the student assignment plan, multi-year student assignment plan moving forward. That includes Area 1, where we have some unfinished business that we need to look at in Area 1 as we move forward. It also includes Area 2, where we're seeing an enrollment decrease. We want to look at that and share that information with you. And also we want to look at Area 3 and share the data there that grounds us moving forward. It really shows us we have a balance challenge and a capacity challenge in Area 3. Then we want to share some data that grounds our process with that. But as we did with the first step of our student assignment plan with Medeeds Creek, our process was driven through the guiding principles that you developed to drive that process. And so Laura's here to take us through the process that we used with you and the community to develop those guiding principles that you endorsed in July, that staff will use to drive through this process. And then lastly, we'd like to share with you the proposed timeline and process that we'd like to use for this second phase of student assignment. So as I walk through and as Laura walks through, and Mike, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please stop us and ask us as we walk through. So the first there you go. The first area that we'd like to share with you is Area 1. And to do that, I like to use the map. And you have bullets on the previous slide that'll walk through the points that I'll make. But as we may have heard Dr. Grimsey use this strategy, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to look at the map as we're looking at the unfinished business that we have to look at in this second step of the student assignment process. If you look at the yellow portion of the map, that represents the new student assignment area that you endorsed for Medeeds Creek Elementary. And that, again, the primary reason for that area was to pull overcrowding from Vass Lakeview in the purple area elementary and Sandhills Farm Life in the what we might call the salmon area, I'm not good with colors, but I think that's more of a salmon or beigey area there with Sandhills Farm Life Elementary. And as we are opening up Medeeds, it will open up around 68, 69% capacity. And so that offers us the opportunity to look at other areas around Medeeds Creek that we can pull in additional students in this second phase, potentially. That's a question that we need to look at. How might we do that to best utilize the capacity at Medeeds Creek? We also know that both Sandhills Farm Life and Vass Lakeview are projected out over the years to be overcrowded again. And so we need to be looking at that as part of our unfinished business. And so the areas that we talked about back in December, that Mike talked about back in December, that we'd be looking at as potential areas is, you'll note, Medeeds Creek is in Southern Pines. It's actually a second Southern Pines Elementary School. So that's an area we'll be looking at. But we'll also be looking at this area that's currently in Sandhills Farm Life as a potential area to not only utilize the capacity of Medeeds, but look at potential overcrowding at Sandhills Farm Life in the future. Looking at this next area, right close as you'll see on the map, is another area we may look at as potential of pulling into Medeeds to reduce crowding at Sandhills Farm Life moving forward. And then we also noted an area up top of the Sandhills Farm Life area in the northern portion that we might look at potentially moving to Carthage or even Cameron. And then lastly, we talked about an additional area of unfinished business there in the Vass attendance area. Vass is projected to be overcrowded out in a number of years, and so we know that Cameron Elementary has a core capacity that might be able to take over 100 additional kids with the addition of a classroom modular unit of 6 classrooms that we would have available for Northmore. So these are some of the things we talked about in December that we know are questions that we need to look at as we move forward into this second phase. Additionally, you'll hear me refer to this when I'm talking about Area 3, but we know we have middle school capacity issues. And New Century Middle and Cranes Creek Middle offer us the opportunity to take a look and ask that question. Might we be able to utilize those middle schools to help us with capacity issues that we know we have in our Area 3 middle schools? The second area, a piece of data that I'd like to share with you that we know is something that compels staff to take a look at when we're utilizing those guiding principles, is that we have a declining enrollment in Area 2, the Northmore High School feeder area. We have good facilities in our Northern Moore schools, but we also have declining enrollment. Over the last 5 years, we see enrollment decrease at Robbins of 10%, High Falls of 14%, Northmore High School of 17%, Westmore of 20%, and that's an overall decline in the last 5 years in Area 2 of 13%. That's significant. We are compelled to look at that. We're compelled to see what can we do to address this when we're looking at an entire district of multi-year student assignment plans. So that's something that we'll be looking at. What might we be able to do with that as we move forward with the capacity we know that's available in our Northern Moore schools. And then Area 3, I'd like to share with you some data around balance and capacity in our Area 3 feeder pattern to Pinecrest High School. There's several things that we know offer us the opportunity to look at this that we have not had in the past. The Deeds Creek, as I noted, is a 800 student elementary school that is opening up in Southern Pines. It's a second Southern Pines Elementary School. We have 3 large elementary schools that will be opening up, our new Aberdeen Elementary, our new Southern Pines Elementary, and Pinehurst Elementary will be built to be 800 student elementary schools. That offers the opportunity to look at crowding at West Pine Elementary. If we look at that, we then could look at crowding at West End Elementary. That has seen an increase in enrollment, significant increase in enrollment over the last year or two. And then we also gives us the opportunity, when we're looking at that balance and capacity guiding principles, of looking at the significant demographic imbalance that we see at our West Pine and our Southern Middle schools and their feeder patterns therein. So it offers us that opportunity, and it demands our attention to look at it as we walk through this process.
Tim,
Yes, ma'am.
is West End currently closed to transfers?
It will be for next year, yes, ma'am.
This coming up
This coming year, it is
Okay.
a closed school.
Okay, okay.
It was not this year, but it is only for
And
next.
do you know right offhand what the student limit is by chance for West End?
I do not off the top of my head. We have those capacity charts, but I don't
Okay,
know.
no.
I wouldn't want to, that's
Just
where,
curious.
I didn't mention John's not with us today, and that
Yeah.
he's someone who could come right back.
Yeah.
John is not with us, but of course will be with us throughout this process.
Just curious.
When you're looking at the capacity, you've done the decrease enrollment. Can you look at the growth in those schools with percentages for Sandhills Farm Life, Vass Lakeview, West End, West Pine Elementary School, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We'll look at some trends at those schools. We'll try to do 5 years.
That's the whole point of the process.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's very much a part of what we do. But that's not something we come back to you next week on. I mean,
No. Yeah.
that's going to be part of the analytics that are involved. That'll be all part of the discussion, right?
Other questions before we share some data about our Area 3 patterns of imbalance and capacity. All right, so the first chart I want to share with you shows you our Area 3 middle school free and reduced lunch patterns. These are the students who qualify, percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. That means they come from families that are economically disadvantaged. Southern Middle School has 60% of their students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. West Pine Middle has 23%. That's a 37% differential discrepancy that we see between those two schools. When we look at demographics in our Area 3 middle schools, the chart on the left, as you're looking at the slide, is Southern Middle School. On the right is West Pine Middle School as you're looking at the slide. The orange represents the white population. The other pieces of the pie graph represent other racial groups. Southern Middle School has 42% white and 58% other racial groups. West Pine Middle has 75% white, 25% other racial groups. We talk about achievement when we talk about balance. How are schools performing, creating balance with achievement? And I know these numbers are hard to read. What we really want to focus on are the bars. The bars on the left represent Southern Middle. Bars on the right represent West Pine Middle, both grade level proficiency and college career readiness. And you can see the discrepancy that lies there over the last 5 years between Southern Middle and West Pine Middle in overall school proficiency.
And so for these, Tim, for both schools, curriculum is basically the same. I mean, the students are offered same curriculum as what's being offered at West Pines.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. The next chart I'd like to share with you is looking at those feeder elementaries into our middle schools, our Area 3 elementary free and reduced lunch patterns. We look at our feeder elementaries for Southern Middle, that's our Aberdeen schools and our Southern Pine schools, 67% of their students qualify for free and reduced lunch. We look at our feeder elementaries into West Pine Middle, Pinehurst, West End, and West Pine, 28% of their students qualify for free and reduced lunch. That's a 39% differential. Lastly, I'd like to take a look, and you can't read this chart well on the slide, but I'm going to point out a couple key pieces here. This is the capacity chart of our Area 3 middle school and the projections of their capacities moving out all the way to 2027. Let's just focus in on the year 2022, and you can see that Southern Middle is projected to go down in attendance. West Pine Middle is projected to go up, all the way up to over 133% capacity. Southern Middle at 82% capacity. But even if we combine the two schools' capacity in the year 2022, you still see that our Area 3 middle school capacity overall is over capacity. We're still over capacity in our Area 3 middle schools, even if we were to equally combine those two schools. So that's something just wanted to point out, that is a challenge, a piece of data that we're compelled to look at as we move through this process. Let's pause one more time for any other questions before I turn it over to Laura to do a review of our guiding principles.
To reemphasize that, so what you're telling us is that we're going to need to build another middle school.
That
That is
certainly
in our
Mike could
future.
probably chime in, but yes, that is one, and we also need to look at capacity availability in other middle schools in our district, like Cranes Creek and New Century.
Yeah, I think we should do them in that order. The current capital plan that was approved by the school board in 2014 includes another middle school, but I think if you look at the total, if you look at the bottom chart and go all the way to the right-hand column, projected 2027, you'll see a total number of students at both Southern Middle and West Pine Middle of 1,578, with a total capacity of 1,400. That is alarming that it's 178 students more than capacity, but it's also not enough to justify the construction of another 700-student middle school. So we have to be mindful of capacity that we have at New Century and Cranes Creek as a consideration, because we simply can't ask to build what would amount to be maybe a $50 million middle school at this point is 178 students, when we have room for those students right next door. So, you know, everything about Tim's presentation today with Mike and Laura is about what are the challenges that confront the advisory committee to the superintendent as it formulates the plan. And these definitely are challenges. But I don't want to very quickly throw out the fact that we can just build a new school. I mean, it's, as you can tell, it takes a while to get to that point. So we need to look at some intermediate measures.
Yes, sir.
Tim, I have a comment. I'd like to make sure that the public understands. People have a tendency to look at figures, and particularly for the economically disadvantaged schools, where there are a lot of them, look at performance and try to blame it on the teachers. I want the public to understand that all our staffs are great staffs. The challenges that these with large percentage economically disadvantaged schools are enormous. But we have the people there to meet them, but there are other things that we can do to help. And I just want to make sure that none of this is a staff problem. It's another type of problem.
The only other thing I'd point out is that, you know, we know that there was a fire at West Pine Middle this weekend, and we have modulars there. And so if there are opportunities to really diminish our need for these modulars, that would be a benefit as well. So that's something that we hadn't really thought about, didn't have to think about until this weekend, but now we know
We
that.
should have thought about it.
Well, we have thought about
We
it.
have, yeah, that's a part, and that's a part of
Well,
it.
Yeah,
in depth thought about it.
I think that the
Yeah.
concerns that we expressed to the commissioners about modular units, this weekend's event proves that we weren't making that up.
Right.
There are legitimate reasons why you do not want to depend on modular buildings.
Right.
Now, there are steps you can take to, mitigate that risk. And with our modular units, our standalone modular units have very quick access. It's very easy to get out of them in a hurry. But I think that, we were reminded this weekend that it's not just modular units, it's old modular units. We have a lot of them that we've been using for a very long time. And so by building new schools, we create opportunity for us to look at revising our student assignment plan, and that's precisely what we're doing. In accordance with the guiding principles. I don't want to steal the thunder. Our consultants are just getting ready to talk about why we do that, so. Tim?
You know, Mr. Locklear, too, and following up on Ms. Thompson's question about curriculums at the school, that's a state mandated curriculum, so we're going to be offering the same quality program at any school in the county, no matter what the makeup of the students is. In addition, we have the same teams, the same clubs, the same extracurricular opportunities for the kids at both of these schools. And so, no matter what, the programs are there, it's what the kids make of them and where they can go with them. So I think we can be very proud that every middle school in the county has the same offerings and brings these same opportunities to our students.
We will see as we get into this that there are variations, though, in terms of what the volunteer communities can have the capacity to provide for their schools, and there are very distinct differences between those.
Yeah.
So as we know, we have schools that have more technology because their parents are able to step up and provide beyond what the school board provides. We have schools that may have the same athletic teams, but some are able to do things more than others in terms of their equipment and their uniforms that supplement the school board budget. And then we also have schools that have field trip opportunities that greatly exceed the field trip opportunities of other schools that, again, go above and beyond what the school board provides. So I think all of that is going to be a very fair part of the conversation as we move forward. At this point, we want to make sure that we avoid definite statements, that we know, because we are going to be looking at the full gamut of the challenges that we have. So I would want to just temper that just a little. It's not that, in terms of what the school board provides to our schools, that is equitable. And some schools have more, and that's a credit to the parents whose children attend those schools. But then we do need to recognize the fact that there are some schools that don't have that same, the families in those schools don't have that same capacity to provide that supplemental service beyond what the school board provides. Just for the public record. Mr. Locklear?
Yes, sir. I'll turn it over to Laura to review the board's guiding principles and the process behind that. Laura?
Thanks, Tim. Madam Chair, Superintendent Bob, and members of the board, it's good to be back. Mike and I were just talking yesterday about being excited about coming back for a second year. I particularly want to thank you for the beautiful weather you called up today for me. You know, I live over there in the area of the state where it's frigid right now. So I'm enjoying the sunshine. We began working with you guys last May or June. I don't remember specifically. But one of the first things we talked about was we needed some guiding principles to help us through the process. And so we met with you on June 11th in a work session. And if you'll remember, we had chart paper all around the walls, and you guys were up and moving, and there was a lot of good discussion, a lot of good ideas put on the table about what we should consider when drawing attendance areas. And then we took that feedback from you guys and we took it to the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. And they reviewed your discussions and also added to the discussion on what should be considered when you're developing an attendance area for a school. And then out of all of that, we brought you some recommendations, and you approved those guiding principles as the foundation of our work last year. And looking back over the year, Mike and I said, wow, we had a really great year. And it was mainly because we had solid guiding principles to go by, okay? So how did all that come about? We started talking about your policy on student assignment. If I could get this little clicker to work here. You have a good solid policy on student assignment. You believe every student should have access to a high quality education. That's excellent. Then we focused on the last sentence of your policy. The Board of Education may redraw attendance lines as necessary based on space availability and other relevant factors. And we said to you, what do you mean by that? Other relevant factors. And that's where the guiding principles started to develop, okay? We also talked about why would we even have guiding principles? Well, that's really important. You've got to have the guiding principles because you need to fill in that blank on your assignment policy, okay? You need guiding principles so that you, the board members, and the staff can have a way to support what you're proposing as the attendance areas, okay? And you need to be able to analyze the relationship of the moves that you're making and why you're doing it, all right? And then this was key that we were very transparent to the community of why we proposed the moves, okay? And what did we come up with? Well, we said, well, hold on a minute. I want to make sure you understand that you're going to get some guiding principles that you can't prioritize. Don't try to prioritize the guiding principles. That's not going to work because there's going to be a push and a pull as you work through the assignment areas. Some guiding principles are going to overlap. Some guiding principles are going to conflict. And we saw that last year, okay? Sometimes we may not realize the extent of the guiding principle, but we're working toward it, okay? We saw that again last year. And then, I had to click one more time. Somebody's got these things shooting in there, and I'm like, wait a minute, what am I missing? And then the guiding principles are also dependent on what schools are involved or the impact area. So last year we worked in Area 1, so we really didn't realize anything in Area 3 or Area 2. But that's going to change as we work through those areas this year, okay? And we'll expand the impact area. So on June 11th, we heard a lot of feedback. This is what we heard. We basically heard 4 major categories. Balance. You felt like you wanted your schools to have some sort of balance. And you heard Tim talk a lot about that just a minute ago. Balance. balanced utilization for all of the schools, balanced program opportunities, balanced demographic factors, okay? We heard you talk about good, solid planning, okay? Making sure that whatever we did, we provided stability for our students and our families. Being that I was from Wake County, you know our history in Wake County, you didn't want to repeat the problems of Wake County, where we would move students more than once in a short period of time. The stability was important to y'all, okay? You wanted to make sure we considered the impact of programmatic changes, what assignment might affect, how assignments might affect that. Keeping neighborhoods and communities together, that was important to you guys. It's important to know what future growth is coming your way and keep that in our planning, okay? And utilize up-to-date membership. Mike just told me as we walked in the building that he's currently in the process of geocoding this year's students so that we will have the most up-to-date student membership as possible as we work through this year. And you also wanted us in our planning to consider feeder patterns, elementary to middle and middle to high. The other two big groups you talked about were efficiency. A goal is to eliminate the use of modular and mobile units. We need to consider travel distance. That's super important. And walking and safety issues for our students. And then the fourth big category was about community. And we wanted to communicate with our stakeholders. We wanted our stakeholders to be involved in the process, to understand the process, to be able to provide the feedback of the process. And through all that, we wanted to be firm, fair, and consistent with the guiding principles. And finally, to be sensitive to the needs of Moore County schools and to what makes Moore County schools great. So all of that was discussed by you guys on that June 11th meeting and by the advisory committee members at that follow-up meeting. And so we came back to you with a summary, and we said, okay, we heard you, and now this is what we propose. Same four categories: balance, planning, efficiency, community. And we just put it all in simpler sentences, but I feel like we did a good job capturing your thoughts in these four categories. And we started everyone with the sentence, to the extent possible. Remember, you get back to those other things that said they conflict or may not be achievable, that kind of thing. So each category is, to the extent possible, we would like to move in this direction. Okay, so the assignment proposals should provide balance in building utilization, program opportunities, and student demographics. To the extent possible, the assignment proposal should seek to optimize operational efficiency. Under planning, use up-to-date school and planning data, provide stable assignments that are forward-thinking and responsible to community and student needs. And under community, the assignment proposal should promote transparency and be sensitive to the needs of our families. We really had great parental input last year. We had community meetings. It was a good year, and we're really optimistic that with these same guiding principles, this year will go well too. And so what we proposed, you guys affirmed at your meeting on July 16th. And I think part of today's discussion is to ask that you affirm these again for this year's phase 2 or year 2 of the assignment process. Any questions?
I would just ask that we pause for a moment and allow board members to express if you, in reviewing this or since last fall, does anybody have any particular thoughts about these guiding principles? We will ask you to suggest revision. If you want to revise, today is a day to talk about that a little bit and provide the staff with guidance between now and next week, because the staff would ask that you revise and affirm or simply affirm So, Madam Chair, I'll just turn it over to board members for a few minutes, just to have some, at least preliminary conversation about that.
Are there any comments about how it went last time? Thoughts?
I think the principal served us well last year, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I liked working with these and then working with advisory committees on this because it gave us an opportunity to speak and gave the community an opportunity to speak. We had such a good variety of meetings over that time period, and I would hope we could do, and looking at Dr. Bob's timeline on various things, we're looking at something very similar, and I feel that we can support the community. And like you, Bruce, if it's not broken, let's keep it like it is.
I'm fine using the same principles, continue to use them.
Consistency.
I have to agree with the first three. I think these work so well for us, especially being very transparent in what we're doing. We're not trying to skirt around anyone's back and move their child somewhere. We want people to know what is ahead, have a chance to really speak up and be heard and have it all considered. So I really like the way they played out on our first efforts.
I'm going to skip you, Ms. Thompson, for a second. Can we? I'll come back to you in a minute.
I was going to say, I agree with them all, especially being on both sides of the spectrum last time because my child was affected with that. So I was there as a parent, but I was also there as a board member. And I think their guiding principles were wonderful on the parent side and as a board member side.
So, Ms. Thompson, you were not here last time. Are there any, this is an opportunity for you to ask us any questions as board members, if you have any. I know you've been watching and paying attention, but are there any questions that you have or
I
you
don't
want
have any
clarification?
questions. I know that the first community forum that I attended before the election was in October, and that was at Carthage. And one of the parents that spoke actually was thankful of how well that they had been informed. I don't know if you guys remembered, but she was very thankful of the process of how the board went about to get them informed and the assignments and being open and honest with the process as it unfolded. So on that night, I thought, wow, thankfully we don't have any negative comments. So I don't have anything new to add. I think I've looked at it, and I think it hit on everything that we need to assure that stays in front of us as we go through this phase as well.
Great, I wanted to make sure you were comfortable because you were the one that was not involved in this process the
Thank
first
you.
time around. I think the only other thing I would add is I agree that the principals were very effective, and I remember the challenge that we had is that sometimes one principal would impact another principal. Bruce, you often talk about the whack-a-mole effect, and it's hard to keep them all in balance. And that was something we struggled with the first time around, and I think the process, though, helped us struggle with that transparently and in the open with everyone. So from my opinion, and it sounds like from the rest of you, there's a consensus that these principles will continue to be an effective guiding tool for us. Is that, I know we're not voting on it, but I want to give some guidance to Dr. Grimacy and the staff about any changes. It doesn't sound like we're proposing any changes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for walking through
Full
that.
speed ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the last thing we'd like to review with you, as we've heard, the timeline and process, proposed timeline and process as well, to get your endorsement and support of that. Obviously, today, we're sharing this information with you and asking for your recommitment to those guiding principles. Once you, pending your approval of this, on February 11th, we'll move forward with staff working with and our consultants working with our advisory committees to develop the first draft of the school assignment plan to bring to you on April 1st. In just a couple slides, I'll talk a little bit more about the structure for our advisory committee that we'll be using in this process, which is a little bigger than what we had during the first step. So we do want to talk a little bit more about that as we wrap up the presentation. But we'll bring that first draft to you on April 1st. and we'll present that to you. And then immediately the next 2 nights, we'll have community input sessions at New Century Middle School and Southern Middle School to gather input from our community. We then will go back with that input, and with staff and Numerex will work with the advisory committee to continue to gain feedback and input to bring a second draft to you at your May school board work session. Again, going back to our community for community input sessions at New Century and Southern Middle. And then we'll have a pause from there where we'll continue to do work on the student assignment plan, but we'll be hitting the end of the school year. We'll be going into the summer, and so Numerex and our advisory committee have some planned meetings over the summer. We'll continue to be looking at that input, continue to refine the draft with Dr. Grimacy, and Dr. Grimacy will be bringing his recommended multi-year student assignment plan back to you in September of 2019. We've already got a date for a public hearing, which will be the final opportunity for the
That's
public.
a tentative date.
Tentative date,
Yeah,
yes,
we-
sir.
yeah,
So
we're saying
thank you.
mid-September with September 12th being.
It's easier to change the date than to make it late.
That's right.
I certainly learned that from Dr. Grimacy. So we certainly can change that based on the board's recommendation. But we'll have a school board hearing in September to receive additional input from our community. And then at your October school board work session, you would certainly advise staff and the superintendent, Dr. Grimacy, if there's any revisions that you would like. And then at your October 14th business meeting, you would approve and take final action on the multi-year student assignment plan.
And Tim, is with the locations of New Century and Southern Middle, is the plan to do an overview of the assignment with specific focus on the schools and the feeders within those areas? So for example, New Century, you would mainly focus on the Carthage and the Robbins, that type area. Is that what the plan is?
Yes, ma'am. We would,
Okay.
at New Century, we would focus on area 1 and 2.
Okay,
The
okay.
feeder schools for Union Pines and the
Okay.
feeder patterns into Northmore High School. We would most likely hit on the other, but we'd focus on those 2 areas and gain feedback from those community members and parents. And then at Southern Middle, we would focus in on area 3, the feeder pattern for Pinecrest.
Okay, and I ask because I've already had questions from different ones, so I just want to let them know where they need to show up.
Yes, ma'am.
To get some
Great question.
information.
Yes, ma'am.
If I might, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, board members, what we don't have on the timeline is 3 additional meetings that I'll be conducting, similar to the meeting that I conducted at the Douglas Center on Thursday night. I'll be doing that in February and March. My goal is to conduct at least 3 meetings of that nature and get them finished at least 2 or 3 weeks in advance of the presentation of the first draft. And my goal there, Ms. Thompson, is to conduct one in the Northmore area, and then one in the Union Pines area, and one in the Pinecrest area.
Okay.
And it'll be a preview of the process. Some of the information we're sharing here, I'll review that again, but questions in each community are going to be a little bit different. And so that'll be just from the superintendent's perspective. We won't have Mr. Miller and Ms. Evans there. It's not intended to be real technical, but it is intended to answer some of the questions that you're hearing. So we're still in the process of working that out with principals, location, and exact dates, but you can expect that very soon. We'll put that out.
Right. And just to let other board members know, and Betty, if you want to jump in, certainly feel free. But Betty and I attended the forum that was held at Douglas. I thought it went extremely well. Dr. Bob was very open and honest as he provided something similar with regard to our plan, guiding principles. And what our timelines were going to be and how the whole plan would unfold with community forums. There were some questions, and I think he responded to those very open and honest and was transparent throughout the process. So I appreciate, Dr. Bob, your candor to let the community know that we're going to have some tough decisions that we're going to have to make as we go forward. But we want to look at all areas, all questions. As he said, that we want all skeletons to come out of all closets, so to speak. But we want to make sure that we have everything, all questions, concerns out in the forefront as we proceed in this process.
You know, to add, oh, excuse me.
I wanted to chime in and say that I appreciated the fact that Dr. Bob created a climate that offered the family members and parents and teachers that were there a comfortableness, if there is such a word, to ask those questions and to be open about that. And I appreciated the civility of it all as well as the openness that occurred. And so, and there were family members and parents and others that stayed afterwards to ask questions of us individually. And so that also opened up some chains of communication. So thank you.
Well, speaking of communication, a thank you to Mary Kate for the very thorough article she did to follow up the meeting, because I was not at the meeting, and I've had people ask me questions about it as well, because they had read the pilot article, and they were very pleased to see that there was such extensive explanation of what happened. So thank you very much.
And I would just say that there are many questions there aren't any answers to, because that's the whole purpose of the process. And so a lot of times, there are just some folks that think, well, do you already have your mind made up? Is there a master plan? Is there, there really isn't. The guiding principles really are what this process is about. And got a lot of positive feedback. And that's the model that we'll make available in each of the feeder areas, and in a model that if there's other groups, PTAs and whatnot, that I can physically do it, I'll get to as many of those as I can and help with the process. The difference between these forums and those to come is that these are about the general process and the challenges that beset the school district as we move forward. Later on, the forums that are included in Mr. Locklair's plan, these are specific opportunities to address the drafts of the plan. So when you look in here and you look at April 2nd and 3rd, when you come to those forums that night, you're actually going to have the plan, and we're going to engage you in activities to help you gather around, just as we did last fall, and weigh in on what might we be missing here, or what might we be accomplishing here, and what revisions should we consider. And we'll do that for 2 drafts before we then take the summer to take all that input and analyze it and bring back a final proposal for you all in September.
Will you have dates for these upcoming forums when we come back next week?
You mean the ones that I'm going to
That you're
conduct?
gonna
Oh,
conduct.
I hope so. Yeah, we're in the process. I've got a couple of principals that are just looking at their calendars, and we should have that by the end of the week.
Are these April and May dates for first and second draft reviews, are those pretty firm?
Yes, ma'am.
So folks, we
Yes,
can
ma'am.
let
Yeah,
folks know.
Yeah, we don't have any choice with our consultants who are not doing this voluntarily. There are some business obligations that we have here, so we do have to put those on the calendar. Dr. Bob and the principal can always find another date, but when we've got people coming in from out of town, we've got to set dates and stick with them.
Well, the other part, because Stacy and I and Bruce part of the time participated in the first phase of this, by setting this up, even though we can't satisfy everyone as much as we'd like to, at least people were heard and knew where we were coming from. And I think by continuing that vein, we'll again put the trust with us that we're doing it for the benefit of our students.
That's a good segue to a description of the advisory committee. So, Madam Chair, with your permission,
Yes,
we'll
please.
get back to Mr. Locklair.
Thank you, sir. Yes, as noted earlier, did want to give a little more information about the advisory committee to the superintendent in the student assignment process, the structure of that, how it is a bit different, bigger, broader than it was in the summer and the fall of 2018. So membership's going to include, of course, district staff, our consulting partners. We'll have a principal, a teacher, and a parent from each school in the county except our high schools, who are the recipients of what this new feeder pattern will be, and Pinckney Academy. Additionally, there'll be one team that will represent both our Aberdeen schools and our Southern Pines schools, since they will be consolidating and be coming together. So altogether, that's 18 to 19 teams, so about 60 folks who will be on this advisory committee. And the structure of that will work where we'll have a general session or opening session where we're sharing information and data that we want to get their feedback and thoughts and ahas about. And then they'll be breaking up into each area, Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, and our high school principals are going to be the chairs to facilitate those areas. They've agreed to help facilitate those area breakouts based on the protocol that we give them, make sure we're getting good feedback from each individual area, and then coming back together to share some key points before we end our days. So that's how those advisory committees will work. And they'll obviously work on the development of all three of the plans with Dr. Grimacy as he presents his final recommendation in September. So any questions about how the advisory committee will work?
And just to underscore that these are advisory committees to the superintendent.
Correct.
So this is really to help formulate the plan that then we, as the board at the end, will take a look at. So the very first part of this is really focused on staff engagement with the community, and us sort of letting them do their job.
And that's, I might add, that's the reason why we don't have any school board members on the committee this time, because it's the whole county. And so effectively, every one of those would become mandatory school board meetings. So, you know, my hope is that you'll allow me to work with the advisory committee and do the work that we can. Then the community forums are different. That's wide open. But it's not that there's a secret or anything. It's just that out of fairness to all board members, I think, you know, we either have to have everybody or nobody at those meetings. And so there's a lot of people there. We're going to have our hands full making sure that those are working meetings. Those aren't meetings where you just put something out. I mean, remember at that point, the advisory committee will have already had the community forum. They will have taken all the input, and now they're trying to make sense of that, and they're getting down into the details of discussing, you know, where this should be and where that line should be, and what did we hear at that most recent meeting, and is that something we can accommodate, not accommodate? So that'll be where we'll be really making sausage at that point, and the committee's going to be needed to have some discretion with that. We'll appreciate your accommodation there. Questions and discussion. I guess that's what we're doing.
Yes, sir.
One question. Obviously, this is going to be, the dates and whatnot are going to be distributed to all the schools and through the newspaper and whatnot. Has anyone given consideration to notifying daycares and or preschools within our area? And I'm thinking, because I have a grandchild who's going to enter one of these brand-new schools. And I was telling my daughter with her 3-year-old that she ought to pay attention to what was going on because it could affect her. And I don't know that we have actually tapped into that community resource. Now, I'm not asking anybody to go out and look up every name of every preschool, but there is a thing called the Child Care Network, which regularly sends emails to all the licensed daycares and preschools within town that we might be able to work through that group, and they could disseminate information for us as well. But that's a huge population that'll be coming to that.
Let's defer to Ms. Murphy on that one.
Okay, Ms. Murphy.
Catherine, is the board is inquiring about communications with, go ahead.
With daycares and preschools within the area. But like I said, I think we could work through the Child Care Network, who already has that ability to disseminate information.
She was mentioning it's called Partners for Children.
Yeah, that one.
And, so we could let them know that this is going on, tell them to let.
Make it real simple for us, but just one more name to add.
The only other thing I'd add is, I just want to point out that this is an 8-month process. Just let that sink in. It's an 8-month process, so we're just at the very beginning of it, and there'll be a lot of work to be had, and every stone will be uncovered to make sure we do it right, rather than doing it quickly.
We'd rather do it right than to do it. Thank you, ma'am. Couldn't agree more.
And the last thing I'll say is, you know, really reflecting on where we ended in phase one with McDeed's Creek and how important it was that we stopped where we did, because we realized the impacts that having this brand new school, along with having these larger schools come online in the next 2 years, what impact and domino effect that has on the rest of the county. And so I really appreciate the thought that staff, Dr. Grimmincy and staff have put into kind of thinking about this real bigger picture that we have not had the opportunity to consider before. And having these new schools where they are located makes a big difference. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and hearing where we go from here. So thank you.
Madam Chair, there'll be two motions that the staff will recommend. One, we will, as we indicated before, we'll seek your reaffirmation of the guiding principles, and also we'll appreciate your endorsement for the public record of the process and timeline. So if there are any further thoughts about that, let us know. Otherwise, we'll be intending to bring back what we've presented today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.